Let's start the fucking show, huh?
This is the sound
I stand here right now as a changed, humble man. I've been in a prison correctional system for 5 years now, and that is exactly what I am. Corrected. Rehabilitated. I just want you to give me a chance. I won't let you down. Thank you for your time.
Mr. Chairman, if I could have just a moment.
Go ahead.
You see, I did my homework on this man. And I can tell you with confidence that he's actually quite a good liar. That fight that got out of hand, that was actually Mr. Evans flying into a murderous rage because of how the victim was looking at his girlfriend. And as a younger man, there were other acts of violence, frequently involving the attentions of a woman. Mr. Evans fits the criteria of a malignant narcissist. Charming, highly intelligent, as you've witnessed. But malignant narcissists are compelled to prove their superiority. Everything's a seduction. And if they're rejected or things don't go their way, they lose control. Some other more well-known malignant narcissists were Jeffrey Dahmer, John Wayne Gacy. Hold on.
No,
Please,
sir,
Mr. Evans, please sit down. Please sit down, Mr. Evans. I can tell you there's violence in this man. And his control over himself is slender. I'll let my fellow board members make up their own minds, but there are 5 families outside who are hoping and praying that we do not set Colin Evans free. Mr. Evans, as I'm sure you're aware, to be granted parole in the state of Tennessee, it must be a unanimous vote. We'll take this up again in 5 years as mandated.
Ladies and gentlemen, that convenes the state of Tennessee parole hearings for today. Madam Secretary, you can turn off your recording devices. Ladies and gentlemen, you're free to go.
Welcome, everybody, to the latest episode of the No Name Pod. I am your host once again. I am joined by my co-host, Mr. Wasted. Wasted, how are you?
Not too bad. Hello?
I do have a question for you right off the bat. It's a little bit later for you today than it was last time we were recording. And I asked you at the beginning of the show last time if you had a beer, and you said it was a little too early. So do you have a beer today?
No.
No?
I had a bit. I've just been on the toilet for an hour. I think if I down a beer right now, I'll be like have to cut out of the show.
Anything we should be concerned about with you being on the toilet for the last hour?
No, just the perils of alcoholism.
Perfect. I like to hear it. Well, I just let's see here what I got here. I just opened a sparkling water orange cream soda flavor, so I'll be drinking that in honor of your beer. If that makes any sense. Let's get right into it today. I want to say that this week I'm coming to you live from the bullshit corner. I got a plaque from my neighbor. He knows we do the podcast every week or every few weeks there. And he was out and about with his wife, and they came across this, let's see here. It looks like it's some kind of metal. It's a metal plaque kind of that I'm going to put on my desk, and it's called the Bullshit Corner. They gave it to me to broadcast from there. So thank you, Justin and Michaela. I'm going to give you a shout out. Thank you for the beautiful plaque, and I will be coming to you each week now from the Bullshit Corner. That sounds great. I love it. So Getting right into it, we are going to talk about narcissism and social media and maybe some presidents and maybe some other things if we have the time, but we're going to focus mainly on what exactly is narcissism in the 21st century, in the digital age, and how social media may have an effect on narcissism and an increase in it. But I'm going to hand it over to Wasted, and he's going to talk about it, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, well, I think, narcissism, like a basic idea of it is that a narcissist basically just, they have no self or no soul, normally because it's been kind of like destroyed at some point, either in early childhood. There's sort of like a pathological narcissist who is always a narcissist. I think we're like looking more at sort of a narcissistic personality disorder. So, they tend to just want attention, yeah, because they're like constructing like this false self that's like the ultimate winner, because their actual real self has been destroyed. So they tend to like not be interested in other people at all. So they lack empathy. They have like an inflated sense of themselves, like a big ego. And yeah, and they often very violent.
Sorry, yeah, go on.
They're often very violent when that self that they've constructed becomes is threatened. Like if you disagree with a narcissist, they get very angry because you're actually kind of attacking this sort of winner, this big winning self that they've created. So it's always a non-stop kind of process for them. I mean, there's different degrees. It's also, I always sort of think of it as like in terms of like modernism and like postmodernism. As in, the painting, The Scream by Edward Munch? That's yes. Like the modernist. That's somebody who's screaming in pain. That means that they have a self to feel the pain and the anger, to scream. But maybe in the postmodern world, everything gets like fractured. Like people's identities are fractured, so they don't actually have a self, but they don't actually feel they don't feel as much pain, because their identities are always shifting. Because like time and space and the postmodern world is you can learn Japanese and be a Buddhist and then eat Italian food. Like, what's your identity? You don't necessarily know, so you're not as attached to this modernist soul that really feels that much pain. So you become a bit of a postmodern narcissist. And that's sort of how I think of it, like digital narcissism on social media is, because everybody's sort of fractured, kind of like a false, people are building like false selves online.
Well, if you look at it this way, if you walk around your office and you tell people how great you are without listening to their responses, they're going to walk around, or they're going to think that you're walking around and you're being an obnoxious jerk. But if you go online, say Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, whatever you want to go on live, and you tell them how great you are, then all of a sudden you're not an obnoxious jerk, you're an influencer. So it gives you a sense of gratification right there, because you're going to get the likes, and it's going, every like that you get and that you crave, it releases a certain amount of dopamine in your brain. It's a clinical fact that's been studied, and they're studying it more and more now. So you mentioned narcissistic personality disorders. It's believed to affect around 6% of the people nationwide. And when we say nationwide, of course, we're talking about the United States. But it's more prevalent in young people, and of course, as are most things, I would say with a negative connotation, they're more prevalent in males as well. And that's just, it's just genetics. I mean, but there's also two types of narcissism. There's the grandiose narcissism, which is, you alluded to that, which is the feelings of superiority and entitlement. But there's also the vulnerable narcissist, who is very hypersensitive to criticism and their constant need for reassurance. Hence the guy walking around the office, right, saying, hey, look at me, I'm great, right? So social media gives you that fix that you're craving so badly. There was some tests that were done. We're going from anywhere from the Newport Institute to a website called Ascend, or even The Guardian. It was shown to have a narcissism has an increase in 30% in young professionals from the 70s to the mid 2000s. It's a statement. It's used as a measurement tool, and it's I am important and famous. So they asked that question to the respondents of the survey, and in the 60s. So this in particular study went for decades, and in the 60s, 12% of young adults endorsed that statement, but in the 1990s, that increased to over 80%. So why is this? And social media has to play a role in this, don't you think?
Yeah, I think social media gives people a way of producing this kind of like false reality.
It distorts our perception and other leadership potential. It results in a toxic workplace, and it makes that workplace run by incompetent people. It stops us from developing critical soft skills like humility, and it also stops us from building meaningful relationships and increase in antisocial problematic behaviors.
Yeah, it's sort of in the workplace. It's sort of a problem, but I think the online it's like a tool, isn't it, for the light, and you're building a false image with images, and it almost becomes like a way of strangling you as you put more perfect pictures of yourself online. You're building this kind of image of yourself, which you can't actually live up to. But I think the younger people, they said it was like social media, like you said, the dopamine and the like gives you that dopamine hit, but also there was a kind of push in sort of young people to boost their self-esteem in the 80s, 90s, telling them, you're great, you can do whatever you want. So it's kind of like a combination. But you were talking more about in the workplace.
Well, both. I was referencing the workplace, but absolutely both. We're talking. I think it extends either way, right? Because social media is an integral part of many workplaces now. It's just a fact. And social media narcissism, it's definitely increasing in young adults, and it can be linked and has been linked with anxiety, and of course the NPD, the narcissistic personality disorder. So we need to find ways to effectively treat this, right, and deal with it. It's very easy to sum it up as very clinical, as in narcissism, whatever, but it can also fall into the realm or the scope of mental health too. So what can be done to fix this? And of course, to fix this personality disorder, this narcissistic personality disorder. I mean, it's said to affect probably 6% of the population, which is a pretty big number. That's 6 in 100, right?
Yeah, and it does seem to build as well. It's a escalating thing, as in the more that you use social media and to get likes and stuff, the bigger your sort of level of narcissism kind of grows. But the way stopping it is like obvious, isn't it? For the social media platforms to remove likes from there.
And that's what Instagram did in 2019. They began hiding likes on their stories.
Yeah, so that you can see that you were liked or something, but not by who as well. There's sort of different variations of it. But also just building true self-esteem in young people rather than them only getting their self-esteem from their social media presence. So another part of it could be, actually getting them involved in other activities where they feel.
And I mean, of course, limiting their screen time, that's always a solution. But I think more a way to like more personal contact, more direct contact with individuals is also needed. Look up from your screen, right? Look around.
Yeah.
Put your phone down for a while and look around in the real world. It's a beautiful place out there, right? Look at the sunset, look at the stars, look at the sunrise, go have fun, look at the water, look at the landscape. There's so much out there, but I think we're so focused on getting that like on Instagram or getting that like on Facebook or increasing the number of, I know I'm guilty of it. I'm guilty of it with this show. I'm constantly checking the Spotify feed to see if we've gotten any new followers. I'm constantly checking the YouTube feed to see how many views we're getting or any comments, likes, subscribes, right? We're constantly, I don't think we put, like, I know I don't, and I think you're on the same boat as me. I don't think we're putting this show out to, become famous and get the likes and get the subscribers. But it's nice to see. And when I do see it go up, it makes me feel good. Right. So,
yeah.
What's
so
that?
On social media, there's a famous saying, it's that just trying to get famous, bruh. It's kind of crossed over in the youth, as in they did do studies, and it's sort of percentage of the youth that now just thinks that getting famous is the most important thing has gone up since the 70s. And anybody who uses these apps like Facebook and Instagram, they say their narcissism goes up 25%.
Yeah.
But what I was thinking is, if you start using it when you're young, but quite young, do you really have a real self? Or is it all just a fake self that you've constructed online?
Well, that's a good question.
So how can you give up that?
Yeah, as a parent, and I've talked to my wife about this, and I'm sure anybody that's listening out there that has children will agree with me 100% that the traits and the personalities and the lingo and all of that my children watch on YouTube or whatever they go on is directly influenced in their vernacular in their daily life, right? And it got to a point where I deleted YouTube off of my devices that the kids use because I noticed it wasn't, I don't even want to say it was bad, but I did notice a change in the way they interacted because of the people they were watching on YouTube. So now they can only go on kids' YouTube, which is a lot better. It's a lot more regulated, and the content on there is geared towards children of their age. But absolutely. So they're, just like you said, Wasted, children that are going to be growing up with this from the time they were born. So exactly. And I noticed that changing because it was changing their identity, right? So it's exactly like you said, 100%.
Yeah, clout chasing as well.
Yeah.
That they accept that what they're doing is they're basically just looking for likes and views and clout. That's the game. I definitely saw something where it said that this kind of attitude, where also a kind of narcissistic trait is like to kind of get what you want by any means necessary. So
that's right.
The lying or cheating to become famous or rich is much more acceptable now. Like fraud is seen as just a way of getting money. Because a lot of the social media people, it's all about scam, really, isn't it? Like the things that they I just saw on maybe even Rumble. It's just some guys seem to have staged having a fight with another YouTuber or something, and he was in hospital posting about it, but it probably wasn't real. Well, I don't know, just I don't think that was the story. But when I looked at it, I was like, it was some kind of a rapper who had a YouTube channel, and he was basically saying he had beef. And, they'd had this, and he'd been shot or he'd been injured in something. He was in hospital posting from, sort of doing the video from the hospital bed with sort of wires hanging out of him. So, yeah, I think they do that in, is it Mumble Rap and all those? They actually, one guy went round somebody's house, didn't he, with a gun for the show, for the YouTube, show, just to generate likes or to generate views.
There was a guy in England floating around. I don't know who he was, but some of the younger guys at work had heard of him. He was going around. I think we're talking about the same guy. And he just went into somebody's house one day. He just like went in and started acting like it was his own house. The guy's like, first off, the wife is like, "Who are you? And what are you doing?" And then the guy comes up. He's like, "What are you fucking doing in my house?" And he's like, "It's cool. Like, it's cool. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it." Like, what the fuck are you doing, man? You're going to get killed, right? Like, somebody's going to take offense to this. But his whole point and purpose of doing this is to get likes and subscribes on his channel, right? Because he's going live, he's doing TikTok live or YouTube live, right? Or YouTube Shorts, whatever he's doing. It's a disregard for your own safety first and foremost, but it's also like a complete disregard for other people's privacy, other people's lives. I mean, you're intruding, and there's a whole bunch of, like, I've seen a few videos now of him doing certain things. What did he do? He went in. The other one was he got into somebody's car, like at a stoplight. He just went in and sat in the guy's car. I don't know how things are over in England, but over here in North America, and I would say more so in the States. Well, definitely in the United States, you don't know who's carrying a gun down there for one. I mean, there's a lot of open carry states, and this guy, like, somebody could just shoot this guy. In here in Canada, our gun laws are a little bit stricter, but I could see him getting hurt, right? Like, you're playing with fire there.
Yeah, I've definitely seen a YouTube where it is a kind of little guy, and he goes up to like real big, like gangster looking guys and sort of says like, "What's up?"
Yeah, I've seen that.
You're in my territory. And the guy's like, because he's smaller, and the guy's this massive guy.
Yeah, man.
Or like three of them, three obviously like gangster type black guys.
Yeah.
But he always has a little joke, you want some beef? You want some beef with me? And then they go, what the fuck do you want? And then they look at him, and he pulls out something from his pocket, like a packet of beef jerky. Do you want some beef? And there's another guy who does girls. He like runs along behind girls and like does something like pulls up their hood, or just like looks at them like in a weird way, like leans in and goes, "What's up?" or something like that. And they go, it's really like a sort of inappropriate thing to do to girls as they're walking through a mall. Or, kind of like skip past them and give them really like a look over. And they go, "Well, hey," and they start chasing him.
Unreal.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny to see the difference in generations because, like I referred to earlier, that some of the younger guys at work, they know all about this and they follow this, whereas you and I think we're of a different demographic, age group, whatever. We look at this. Is it like, I don't know, are we the old people now that our parents were when, we did silly things or stupid things when we were younger? Because I know the guys at work, they were all laughing at that, right? They're like, "Oh, that's funny, man." I'm like, how is that funny? Like, this isn't funny to me. I don't find humor in it. I don't see humor in this, but they're all killing themselves saying this is great, right? So have we just lost that threshold?
There's always been pranksters,
Sure.
There's always been that one in the group or something. But now it's like you said, they're teaching this to like a whole legion of like 8 or 10-year-olds or something that they're growing up with. Everything is a prank to them.
Yeah.
I think that's maybe the difference. It's not just one guy who's annoying and he's going to like, I don't know, throw your bag over the wall or something. It's not just that. It's just it's sort of across the board. And it's like a sort of lack of caring for like other people when that's all you do.
It's a lack of empathy. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And that's one of the traits. That's one of the traits in the social media narcissism. Like, that's anxiety, lack of empathy. Those are all traits, right? Superiority and entitlement. Those are all traits, right? So
but what they're doing, the reason why they're doing all those things is, like you said, it's actually to build up their ego or their self-image, or to create this false self where they're always the guy who wins, the bully.
That's right.
They're the sort of superior or stronger person because they're always making. So it's sort of like a vicious cycle. but they've built up this huge image of themselves that they've got to keep on doing it. And the same with girls who they manicure themselves and put those false eyelashes on and take perfect pictures and do like Photoshop and stuff. You've got to manage that. You've got to keep up that. So when they put a photo and it's just them, they will have a mental breakdown because there's a picture of them with no makeup. Yeah. But you can sort of also compare it to the fear of death. I think with that's also to do with your soul, and you have an unconscious fear of death. That's also something that they're also kind of fighting against. So it's kind of you're kind of always constructing this sort of your soul or your place in society as being meaningful. You're in the culture. So that sort of anxiety will always be there. But the way to deal with it isn't necessarily to just create a completely false self in the digital world. You probably need to, you need to become part of the real culture. And people do that. You become you join a religion that maybe gives you a sense of group and a sense of immortality or symbolic immortality. Anyway, all these people will live on in a sort of long tradition. I suppose nationalism is the same. We're all English or all American. We're all part of this thing. It's not just. But see, now they've got a new one, and we're all YouTubers.
There was a book that came out in 1973 by an anthropologist by the name of Ernest Becker called "In the Denial of Death," and it was argued that humans share a basic biological predisposition towards self-preservation with all life forms. And we are unique in our capacity for symbolic thought, including self-awareness. And this gives a rise to the unsettling realization that death is inevitable and can occur at any time, which is a scary thought if you've ever sat down and actually thought about that. Let me just finish this quote, that death can occur at any time, and that we are ultimately no more significant or enduring than turtles or turnips. It's a very broad way of looking at it, but I understand it, and it gives you reason to think about it. And I remember one time I used to work driving a truck delivering stuff to restaurants, so supplies to restaurants, and that death can occur at any time, and it happened. I guess he was the chef at the restaurant that I delivered to. Nice guy. I go in the next week, and it's the assistant there, and I'm like, "Oh, what happened? Where's Johnny? He's sick today?" And he's like, "No, he passed away." What? And this is where it really hit me, is that he was driving home from work a few days before, whatever, and he started feeling sick or whatever. Called his wife, and he was like, "Look, I'm driving home. I'm gonna pull over because I'm feeling sick. I'll be home soon." He pulled over to the side of the road and he fucking died. Just like that. He had a brain aneurysm. Out of the blue, man. Crazy. When you think about that, that's crazy. He just called his wife and was like, I'm not feeling well. I'm going to pull over. I'll be home soon. Boom. Dead.
Yeah, and we're always sort of, like the book title says, we're always in denial of that, because that is, that's a very, it's a lot of anxiety to deal with. The fact that even though we're physically humans are quite good, we've got all opposable thumbs or whatever, and we can walk around, and we have a cultural kind of cooperative way of working together that protects us so that we feel safe. And we assign each other roles and jobs to give each other sort of value in this kind of ongoing thing. But really, you could die at any time. I mean, animals do it as well, don't they? I mean, there are other sort of traits, that sort of distinguish us from animals too. We like to play games, like jobs, and we're rational.
Yeah, we have the ability to reason. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
There's all these other things, but it's a bit like, in a way, it's a bit like Freud. Like Freud said, it's all unconscious like sexual aggression, but Becker was kind of like the opposite. Well, he came up with this other idea that it's actually all death, because death actually, the fear of death actually amplifies all these other kind of the weaknesses of humans, sort of like a bag of neurotic or, insecurities. This is the flaw in humans. The big flaw is that we became aware that we're alive, which animals don't. So that's right. It's an existential terror of knowing that you're going to die. This is what drives, and the fear of death. It kind of amplifies all the other kind of problems, the psychological problems we have, and like narcissism.
Sure. If I'm not mistaken, I mean, it only makes sense, but we're the only species on Earth that are aware that we're going to die.
Yeah, I mean, that's why it kind of, and everything we do, and they say that it's unconscious. Like some people say, oh, I'm not afraid to die. But when they've done tests, like empirical evidence, they found that everybody's afraid of dying. They're just repressing it or hiding it or denying it. So some people say, I'm not that bothered if I'm dying. If I die, they say, oh, maybe dying might be painful, but once I'm dead, who cares? But unconsciously, everything they do is basically to avoid death, because everything you do, like in terms of like being part of a culture and following all the rules and doing jobs, and it's all part of a sort of like wall you build up as a security. And then also money. Money seems to be the thing that kind of will make people feel safe. Yeah, they did tests where they just gave people money to hold and then ask them questions. And just having the money kind of lowered the amount of anxiety they felt about certain things.
Yeah.
But it was
100%.
proven that like fear of death actually increases. If you believe in God, then if you get a death reminder, like you said, like you're somebody who died on the road of a brain aneurysm. People who believe in God even more. People who don't believe in God even less. And this is how it became kind of like a political tool, I think. As in they sort of started to realize that if you stimulate the population with fear, then you can get them to like, it's basically like doubling down. People double down when they have a fear of death, which is kind of like what YouTubers do, I think. They double down on being an asshole online. But I think, like I was thinking about it, like, when you see skulls,
when you
does
see
that
what,
make
sorry?
you just buy more GNR merch?
Sorry, when you see what?
When you see skulls, I noticed
Skulls.
that all the GNR logos and stuff, it's always skulls. And that's a reminder of death, which is meaning that you're a GNR fan and you look at the debt and you go, we're going to die. I might as well just buy more GNR merch.
They certainly do like the skulls in their merchandise for sure. And it's always been that way. I guess since you brought it up into the realm of politics as well, a lot of times politicians will transform followers' fears into rage and righteous indignation directed towards outgroups for their political gain, right? Like Donald Trump did that in his campaign by inflaming animosity towards Mexicans and said that they're going to have to build a wall, and he shut down the country to Muslims coming in. All of that's fear, and I mean, at least in the case of it's the Mexicans crossing the border too, because they're coming to rape you and kill you, and the Muslims are coming to take over our country and indoctrinate our children and take us away, right? It's fear, and it's the fear of death as well.
Yeah, and then people look for the safety of like a charismatic leader who shows no fear and promises you money.
That's right.
So it's kind of both. With the demigods, that's kind of like their playbook, is to get people to look at the sort of fear. The fear also sends them, they have a scapegoat, like you said. There's always a scapegoat to kind of calm people down. And it kind of amplifies again, the reminder that you're going to get nuked actually amplifies all the other things about, say, your fear of immigration. All these fears, they all get amplified by the fear of death.
There was a study that asked Americans to think about the construction of a mosque in their neighborhoods or immigrants moving nearby, and they showed higher levels of non-conscious death thoughts, right? And it demonstrated their persistent efforts to demonize Muslims and immigrants, and that had been successful, right? Americans also rated Donald Trump more favorably after being asked to imagine a mosque or immigrants in their neighborhood. So it's all an underlying factor here. It's the death reminder, right?
Yeah, and there's lots of them that they just bring up. Like when there's a problem, they bring up like the Ukraine war getting nuked by Russia. That
right.
kind of, people get scared. It was pretty. I think it's well known that Bush and Trump were very low in the polls, as in en masse people preferred Hillary or en masse preferred Gore or something. But as soon as the campaign started, that's when the kind of charismatic leader or the populist leader became more popular, because when he starts the campaign, that's when the fear is started.
It's a fearless dominance, basically. It's a combo of physical and social fearlessness that these leaders exude. And if you think of Al Gore and if you think of Hillary Clinton, they don't exhibit those traits. And it's very close to these traits of a psychopath, right? There's psychopathic traits that presidents have, and they exude these, and like people high in boldness, they don't have an apprehension about physical or social or a social thing that would like otherwise terrify the rest of us, right? They just seem to have no fear about it. They don't show anxiety or frustration either.
Yeah, I think most U.S. presidents are like the type A characters that do the
100%.
Sort of the type A narcissist with some psychopathic traits, and that can be said about just about every walk of life, as in there is a certain sense, you need some kind of level of narcissism, but to be the president, you have to have some kind of form of lack of empathy, don't you? Because how are you going to bomb these countries or do all these things that you know are going to lead to disasters if you emotionally can't handle it? Even if you're trying to do the right thing, whatever you decide is going to hurt. Some people are going to die because of it. So it's kind of a double-edged sword. But yeah, the big, strong leader, that's what people want, especially when, I think another guy, the Peter Turchin guy, he said that, these populist movements and these demagogues, they rise up when there's a kind of growing gap between the rich and the poor.
Okay.
So as that gap grows, the fear and anxiety that you're going to die because you don't have enough money grows. But also, he said another factor was like a increasing number of kind of sort of elites, cultural elites, which is what you see kind of now. Okay, you've got Trump, but you've got all these other elites who are sort of always like influencers, or they also want to run for president. There's so many of them that they create these because they don't really care. Not all of them. Some of them only pretending to be like live in a trailer park and eat cheese whiz and drink six packs, but they're not really. So they're just it's kind of like optics.
Absolutely.
They're just pretending to and what they're doing is because they want power. It's not because of that they really want to help or care about people. So it's a kind of hard thing for people to tell. But because there's more of them, they create these kind of populist movements that then are basically the demagogues. They basically deflect from the real problem, as in they find all the scapegoats and they say, I'm like the charismatic guy, you can believe in me. But what they're really doing is deflecting from the fact that the elite are stealing all the money And,
So-
there's a massive, wealth gap. As in now, you would say that 50 billionaires or something around the world own more wealth than the rest of the population put together. Something like that. And the last time that happened was in the Gilded Age, when the last Great Depression. So that Peter Turchin guy, he said that it's inevitable. Once this situation arises, the gap and the increasing number of cultural elites, once these two things are set in position, it's almost like inevitable that, the French Revolution, the American Revolution, they all started from this kind of situation. But they just don't know when it's actually all going to completely collapse. So that's a fun thing to think about.
Well, I mean, you can see it, right? And history has a tendency to repeat itself, obviously, but you can see it all. Remember, I don't even know how long ago it was now, but it was a few years. But remember Occupy Wall Street? Remember the craziness that was? I think that was around the 2012 or 2008 economic crash. But I mean, people started to get fed up then, right? Because, well, the rich were getting richer and people were getting poorer, and we recovered somewhat from that after, and we returned to some kind of normalcy. But you can just see a shift now in what the younger generation is tolerating and just they don't want to put up with. Back in the 80s or whatever, if you were like a rich, successful media, or not media, but like this mogul, this baron, and you were filthy rich and you lit your cigarettes with $100 bills and you had $1,000 suits that you wore once or $5,000 suits that you wore once and then threw them out, right? You were revered and you were looked upon as a hero, and you were this great person or demigod almost, if like what you were talking about before. Now, I mean, we have, like you said, more rich people than we've ever had before, and they have accumulated, this small amount of people have accumulated more wealth than the rest of us put together. But I don't know, I see a shift now happening, and with the younger generation, and maybe it's because they don't have anything, and I don't think they do. It's so hard to buy a house now. It's so hard to get a mortgage. They're coming out of university with so much debt and a watered down education that's been heavily politicized with political influence. They look at these people and they're not revered anymore. They're looked upon as stains almost on the world, and I think there's a shift happening.
Yeah, I think it is it's kind of like the tyranny of meritocracy, or they talk about the equality of opportunities. That I think that is the equality of opportunities. I think that doesn't really exist anymore, and that's becoming more and more clear. Like in the 70s, if you got a minimum wage job, you could get an apartment and a used car, and then you get on like a management program scheme. Now that doesn't exist.
No.
So young people don't have this kind of don't have the opportunities, and also most of that relied on what would you call it? It's like abundance, or the resources, unlimited resources. When there's unlimited resources, everybody can have everything. But when there's all these gas prices are going up and stuff, and it's unlimited resources, then your opportunities decrease. So you would say that doesn't exist anymore. So that's like the real thing that the new generation will come to realize very soon, is that it doesn't exist. So you can't go down the other route. I think things like Occupy Wall Street, they're actually real, legitimate complaints. They're not really using some underhand. They're actually attacking the sort of elites, aren't they, with that? So that's probably something that they're always trying to avoid, because the kind of demagogue style or the populist movement kind of deflects off and blames somebody else, not the elite, It's always like basically the poorer people that are, one against the other.
It's always pushed onto the working man, right? And we're responsible for everything, right? I mean, it's just increasing the wage gap, and it's increasing the wealth gap between everybody. And, this, in a roundabout way, this does directly tie into the digital narcissism, because the opportunities, the traditional opportunities, may not be there anymore. So it's time to look for, like you said, new ways, right? And the new ways are generating likes on YouTube, generating subscribers on other social media platforms to monetize their output, right?
Yeah, it's almost like a sort of there was a video game, I think it was called Second Life.
Okay.
It's basically like The Sims, another version of The Sims, but all the things that you earned in the game, I think, actually became valuable. So if you could sort of sell things, and some people just disappeared into Second Life. I think it's popular in Japan as well, as in Second Life. I mean, now everything is Second Life. Like you can sort of forget about not having a job or a future. Your future is going to be online, and then maybe video games are the same. They give you a sense of victory that you don't actually get in real life. They also give you an experience of things you can't do, like when you're paying like Test Drive Unlimited and you're driving around. You've got like a garage which is full of like Ferraris and stuff. Or that you can buy all these different cars and you drive around this like paradise island. That's not going to happen for most people. So they become more attractive and actually better than real life, basically.
Absolutely. So I had to look it up. So I'll give you a brief synopsis of what Second Life is. It's an online multimedia platform that allows people to create an avatar for themselves and then interact with other users and user-created content within a multiplayer online virtual world. It was developed in San Francisco and launched in 2003, way back then. Now, I'm sure we've talked about this before. I know I have. And it goes back to Silicon Valley and the CEOs of these companies working so hard to create the AI online world for them to become gods in that world, because that's how they see themselves. Again, that ties back into the narcissistic traits, narcissistic personality disorder as well, that the owners or the people who developed all these stuff, they want to immerse themselves into these AI worlds, just like Second Life, because like you said, from there, they don't have to, it's better than their real life. They have their garage full of Lamborghinis. They have their harem of women upstairs. They have the 20,000 square foot mansion, all in this virtual world, when in reality, they're just sitting in like some internet cafe with an Oculus on their face, right? So they're not really using resources in real life. They're just sitting there being blobs, not doing anything. But in this alternate world, they're heroes. They're gods. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I just think that it also comes down to values.
Yeah.
I think, maybe it's like more of an American. You don't want to criticize America too much, But like in America, it's like status and money is more important in not values. Most people, that seems to be like the more American sort of way of thinking about things. And it's it's also, I think it's what people, what they get told. Actually, being rich is not enough. You have to be the richest, like Donald Trump, for example. Or if you're good at sport, you have to be the greatest sport. Or you're second place is for losers type of thing.
Is the first loser?
Yeah, that kind of way of thinking about things kind of like demoralizes people. But that's kind of like the it's not about there's no individual development. You're either the richest, and if you're not the richest or the greatest at whatever you do, then you're a failure. So that really puts people in a situation where they're always going to be miserable their whole lives because they can never get enough. You can't get enough money and you can't get enough success. So you're going to be miserable, and that basically fuels everything. It's kind of that opens up like a hole inside of you, doesn't it?
My children, I know I talk about them a lot, but it's good to get things from their perspective because, you know, one of my boys, he loves cars, right? And he knows everything about cars. But he doesn't understand that, like, you don't see Bugattis every day. You don't see Lamborghinis every day. And just the other day, he said to me, he's like, I want to have a Lamborghini by the time I'm in high school. I saw it on YouTube or something, whatever that.
Yeah,
and I was
that's like what's it called? Andrew Tate, you know?
Yeah.
Those are the objectives. If you haven't got a Bugatti, you're a nobody.
Yeah. And so, you know, you have to explain to them that, you know, and straight up, I don't even know if I've ever seen a Bugatti on the street in real life. Do you know what I mean? I'm a man in my mid-40s. I don't think I've ever seen a Bugatti because that's how rare they are. But they don't understand that. They see this on social media and guys like Andrew Tate who are, I don't know. He's pretty toxic, but yeah, he's pretty toxic. I don't want to get into Andrew Tate, but
there is a kind of motivation element to him, which is good.
Sure.
But it also creates a kind of loads of like disaffected wannabes, basically. Like you're not Andrew Tate, you never will be. But so you're going to be miserable, even though you're working to try and save up for your Bugatti.
Yeah.
It kind of motivates you, but you're also in this kind of like it makes you miserable. Because being great is it's good, isn't it? But what about just being like average? Like if the average is okay and everybody's happy, is that better? If everybody's just kind of mediocre, but you know, they don't have this kind of like destroyed soul or self, which they have to fill up with all these other things because they like value their selves in the world as they are, not striving for this kind of like impossible dream. Because it's like a narcissistic image, isn't it, of the Bugatti, the guy with the machine gun and three like Instagram models. It's just an image. Like when like Andrew Tate goes to the toilet, he's still going to take a big shit.
Yeah, he is. Absolutely. Like he's going to wipe his ass just like you and I, right?
Yeah. Maybe not the most eloquent way of putting it, but
yeah, no, it's definitely not. But it's I don't know, man. Like it's a changing world, obviously, right? And I hope for the best.
Now, is that the real world now? That's the thing. Is that the real world?
That's the thing. That's the question. Is that the real world? I guess it is, man. You know, and I say this all the time. Are we becoming the dinosaurs just waiting for our asteroid now? You know, like are we them? Are we my grandfather sitting in his chair complaining at the TV? You know what I mean? Or, you know, like throwing stuff, you know what I mean?
Maybe, but history has said, like that Peter Turchin guy, he basically says that, you know, these, a bit like the fourth turning theory, is that these revolutions will come along eventually. So it will all collapse because of all the things that you're pointing out, is that people are miserable in this way of life, and there's too many elites that are kind of not interested in actual in making the world a better place, sort of thing. Eventually, it does all come crashing down.
And it will.
Yeah, But yeah, but as you know, if you bring this up, yeah, you are just like the old guy who hasn't got like 10 million views on Instagram for like a video of a ham sandwich that you like catapulted across the room and it landed on the window and stuck. I mean,
It's true. It's true. But hey, so equality of opportunity, I guess, right?
the equality of opportunity, yeah.
Yeah. We
Yeah,
don't
I mean,
promise equal outcomes,
it's the
but we
flip
strive
side.
to deliver equal opportunity. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, it's kind of a little bit of a flip side from what Jordan Peterson says, you know. This equality of opportunity, he claims that it's open for everybody, but that relies on sort of limitless resources. And also, it's sort of been proven that those, the equal opportunities for everybody doesn't really exist. There has been like systematic problems that mean that, even people who get all A's and or get all good grades, they don't necessarily get into Harvard. It's not that equal.
Exactly, man. Exactly.
There's still a level of elite that are controlling it. So, I mean, I think they call that the tyranny of meritocracy. But, the idea that everybody will just get everything on their merit, and you should get out there and start working your ass off.
Well, yeah, yeah.
I mean, that is a good thing. I mean, that Jordan Peterson's message is good, but I think there's a little bit of there's another side to it, if you know what I mean. Jordan
Peterson's going through about his retraining, right? That he has to go through social media retraining.
Oh yeah.
Did you hear about that?
I did hear about that a little bit.
It's ridiculous.
That's a bit weird.
It's completely ridiculous. But the person who was chosen to do his retraining is a man by the name of Gad Saad, Gadsaad. He's a professor at Concordia University in Montreal. If you get a chance, follow him on social media. He's a very well-spoken man, and he has some pretty interesting ideas. And he's very active on Twitter, well, X now, but formerly Twitter. He's very active on there, and his responses to a lot of the woke initiative or the liberal left or however you want to call them, his responses are always great. I strongly suggest anyone to follow him on Twitter. He's very funny, and he's the guy that's been chosen to reprogram or retrain Jordan Peterson on his social media. So I don't know. That's all I got.
Yeah, I think a lot of people agree with basically what he is saying in general, but there are just like slight nuances to it that perhaps there's other elements to it as well.
Absolutely.
Depending on who you are. But for inspiring your video game players to get out of the house, and all that kind of stuff, it seems like completely right about all that.
And that's something that's being lost on a lot of people now, because it's just easier to let them stay inside and go on there because they're not, quote unquote, bothering anybody, right? But yeah, get out and go enjoy the sunshine. Go get out. Lift your head. Don't be such a narcissist that you're going to deny yourself looking up once in a while. It's a beautiful, like we said at the beginning of the show, it's a beautiful world out there. Get out and enjoy it. In Canada, at least, we don't have summer for very long. It's just a few months, and then it's going to be cold again when nobody wants to go outside when it's cold. And that's 6 months of the year, right, where it's cold. So the 3, 4, sometimes maybe 5 months that we have, get up and go do something. You will feel better, and your anxiety will go down, and you might not think you're all that great in such a horrible way anymore. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean this problem's been around for a long time. It's been there. It's much worse now. Isn't there like a famous quote by Oscar Wilde it's better to be hated than not talked about at all. I mean, in a way, poet, Oscar Wilde is kind of like the first YouTuber. He's just doing everything for attention.
There is only one thing in life worse than being talked about, and that's not being talked about. Let's end the show on that. That's a great quote. So, Wasted. How's the Wasted show coming along?
I think we've put three new episodes out this week. So we're still putting out episodes. Sometimes the views are falling off a cliff. And then sometimes they do better. But, overall, we're just out there clout chasing like everybody else.
And of course, you are to be found exclusively on Rumble?
No, I've put some on YouTube now. Some of the more popular ones are now on YouTube.
Okay.
The Natural Born Killers one's on YouTube. The one about Perhaps, the new Guns N' Roses single, that's on YouTube now. And the one about all the general rumors, the GNR side.
Right.
They're not huge episodes. They're like 10 minutes long.
Still.
Yeah. And there's one about Courtney Love, I think.
Oh, perfect.
And one about Trump. Oh, no, sorry. Tarantino movie.
Nice. Always great topics. All of them. Always great topics. And on both platforms, it's The Wasted Show?
Yeah, it's The Wasted Show on Rumble.
And on YouTube?
And on YouTube now, yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, look for The Wasted Show. Obviously, hit like and subscribe. We'll release those increase those levels of dopamine when we see the subscribers, or when Wasted sees the subscribers going up. And of course, our show here, the No Name Pod, can be found on almost every podcast or wherever you get your podcast. So that's on Apple. We don't have much traction on Apple yet. So if you are listening on Apple, hit like and subscribe, because that's going to make me into even more of a narcissist. Find us on Google, find us on Castbox, find us on iHeartRadio. Is it iHeartRadio? Or is it Radio Player? It's one of the two. Find us on YouTube. Find us on Spotify. Spotify is the main one. It has a link to all the other sites on there. Hit like and subscribe on Spotify. So Scratch Tracks Production presents the No Name Pod. And of course, soon coming up, I talked to Bill Brasky this week. I spoke to him yesterday, actually. Coming up soon, the shit radio is still in the works, getting everything worked out. And of course it will be here, and it's going to be me, Wasted, and Brasky back together once again. We're going to come at you with a much more relaxed show than this one is. It's going to be a lot more fun, and it's going to be a lot more upbeat, and we're going to have a good time like we did on the Fat Cast. So I, for one, am really looking forward to it. I hope you are too. But yeah. Thanks for listening, everybody. Wasted, thanks again. Always. I love doing the show with you. I think every week we're getting better, and that's what we're striving for. I think we have some good conversations. And yeah, thanks for being here, Wasted.
Adios.
All right, man. We'll talk soon. Bye.
Wilde said, if you want to be a grocer or a general or a politician or a judge, you will invariably become it. That is your punishment. If you never know what you want to be, if you live what some might call the dynamic life, but I will call the artistic life, if each day you are unsure of who you are and what you know, you will never become anything, and that is your reward.